So I'm here to clear up some confusion on these modifiers right here. This one right here is a snoot. This one is an optical snoot. This here is the projection unit. This is a spotlight mount. This is a Fresnel. And this is a standard reflector. Now, you might notice that some of these look really similar to each other, and you might wonder, what are the differences? Why would you use one of them over the other? And what do they even do? So I'm gonna clear that up for you here in this video, and we're just gonna get right into it. First and foremost, all of these modifiers are for Bones mount video lights, and they allow you to have creative control with your lighting. Instead of blasting light all over the room, you control the light with modifiers. Specifically, these are hard light modifiers because they do not diffuse the light coming through, unlike a dome or a lantern diffuser. Those modifiers are different, and I have a separate video on that if you want to check it out. So this right here is called a snoot, and a lot of people like to say this name because it sounds fun, it's spelled funny, and it's just an interesting kind of name, snoot. To put it quite simply, a snoot is controlling the radius and direction of the light that passes through it by blocking it from spilling all over the room. When you buy the snoot, you'll also get a small grid that goes over the front of it, along with some gels if you prefer to color the light. Now, if you use the grid, it will knock some of the brightness out of the light that's passing through it. So keep that in mind when you use the snoot with the grid. In general, this modifier has no frills about it. If you want the circle of light it creates to be bigger or smaller, you have to physically move the light to change its size. Now this here is an optical snoot, and it can do a few more things than the snoot can do. The optical snoot has a slot section to add one of 3 items to further shape the light passing through. You can add a gobo, which is a piece of metal with a cutout shape to create realistic or artistic patterns with the light that passes through. Another option would be an iris control, where it allows you to narrow the light into a tiny circle of light. Lastly, some, not all optical snoots, come with the option to have cutters to shape the light using these 4 metal pieces to create unique angles with the light. And the last main difference is that the optical snoot has glass in it for focusing the effects. This doesn't brighten the light, but rather allows you to focus the effects that pass through the light to soften or sharpen the edges of the gobo shapes. Now this optical snoot in particular allows you to use 2 effects at once. For instance, you could use the iris control and the gobo, or you could use the cutters and the gobo. But just keep in mind that not all optical snoots have this ability. So this right here is what I call the projection unit, made by Godox. Now, technically, I have to be honest with you, this is considered an optical snoot, and I should be comparing it to an optical snoot, but because of some of the differences with this piece in particular, it seems right in the middle of being compared to a spotlight mount and then also to a traditional optical snoot. So bear with me as I cover those things. Now, the main difference between this projection unit and a traditional optical snoot is that this has interchangeable lenses. You can pop out and put in different sizes. There's a 60mm, 85, and 135. The smaller the number, like 60, the wider the effect that it projects out. However, this also means that it will take more light to get a strong effect. Versus the higher number of lens, it'll be more narrow and concentrated, so it will be a little bit brighter. The one sad thing about the projection unit is that it only has 1 slot, and it will only do 1 effect at one time. So you can only do a gobo or only do an iris control. You can't do both. One way to get an additional effect out of the projection unit is to take the little round gels that you can buy and tape them over the front of the lens to allow it to color the light passing through. Or you can use an RGB COB light and just shine the colors through instead of taping them on the front. If you want to check out the videos that I have on those type of lights, I'll link them up here. Also, I will be linking all of these modifiers down in the description, so make sure you use them if you're going to make a purchase because it helps support the channel. Thank you if you do that. So this right here is the spotlight modifier, and this does a whole lot more than the others. So the spotlight mount has cutters that are built right into it. It also has a slot for an iris control and a slot for gobos, and it also has a gel holder on the front of the lens as well. Not to mention that these lenses are also interchangeable and come in sizes of 19, 26, and 36. So the spotlight mount has the ability to do all of the effects at once. Plus, it intensifies the light, so it's a much brighter effect going through the spotlight mount. Now, there are differences between spotlight mounts, and I did a video comparing them up here. That way, you make the right purchase. So if you're interested, check that one out before you buy this. Now, comparing a Fresnel to all of these creative modifiers is certainly not traditional, but I do feel like it's worth noting. A Fresnel is simply a lens for your light. Its main job is to intensify light, and it will either create a spotlight or a floodlight effect, and that is it. With the floodlight effect, it spreads the light out a little bit more so it's wider and softer, while the spotlight effect saturates and condenses all that light down into a tighter beam and makes it a lot brighter. So that's the Fresnel, and at this point I imagine you want to know, well, what are the numbers and the readings for each of these modifiers of light that passes through? So I took some measurements with my Sekonic spectrometer with the same light at the same brightness at the same distance for each one of these modifiers. So let's take a look at that now. All right, lastly and very quickly, we have here the standard reflector that comes with every light that you buy. This doesn't do anything special, obviously, but it's still a hard light modifier. It takes light from spilling all over the place and directs the light in one direction while reflecting it a little bit to make it a bit brighter. At this point, you might be a little confused, so I'm gonna sum up everything and then we're gonna talk about which one you would choose for certain effects or type of scenarios. Now, when you have the Snoot modifier, it simply shapes light without intensifying or detracting intensity from the light passing through. Then you have the optical Snoot that allows you to shape and cut the light using gobos and an iris control and sometimes cutters. However, the light intensity is actually subtracted as it passes through the optical Snoot due to its focusing lens. Then there's the projection unit that works exactly like the optical Snoot, but allows you to change out those lenses instead. But once again, also is removing intensity from the light passing through. Next is the spotlight mount, which does all of the creative effects at once while intensifying the light that passes through it. It can cut, shape, color, and focus the light passing through it, and it also has interchangeable lenses as well. Now, a Fresnel does not do creative effects, but it will intensify the light that passes through almost to the same intensity of the spotlight mount. It is a little bit brighter. And lastly, we have a standard reflector that does not do creative effects, but directs light into a singular direction while slightly intensifying the light. So if I can put it very simply, the spotlight mount does all the creative effects and intensifies the light. Now, that's great if you want to intensify light, but maybe you don't, and that is why you would choose a projection unit or an optical Snoot if you want some creative effects like a gobo or maybe even the iris control, but you don't want it intensified. You don't want your light brighter for it. You want it to stay kind of muted, and that's fine. There's reasons why you choose both of them. Spotlight mount for intensifying creative effects, optical Snoot and projection units are for non-intensified creative effects. And then a Snoot, reflector, and a Fresnel are doing non-creative effects but still have their places and uses. Speaking of places and uses, maybe you're kind of wondering, well, when would I use these and how would I use these? So I'm going to share some examples with you. Obviously, these are not all of the ways that you can use these. You can do so much with these. It's really left up to your needs, preferences, and what you're shooting. Now remember what I said at the beginning of the video, these are hard light modifiers. They don't diffuse the light passing through. If you want to know about all the modifiers there are out there, I do have an older video on it here, and I'm also working to make a newer, more updated one. So if you're not subscribed, maybe consider doing that so that you don't miss out on that content. And of course, if you've got questions, please put them down in the comments. I'm happy to answer them if I can. And otherwise, I will see you in the next video.